What's happening, MJ traders and investors? It's Rod with the Pow Group. Welcome back on The Pursuit of Wealth, your home for MJ stocks, crypto assets, news, and interviews, also home to the best MJ community. It's Monday, March 11th. Hope you had a great weekend. And in this video, we're going to be discussing a topic that I recently tweeted about. I also mentioned it in a previous video, but it was kind of baked in with a bunch of other stuff. So I wanted to do a dedicated video just on this subject because a lot of people were talking about this topic, and I'm curious what everybody else thinks about this as well, because this is something I've been thinking about really for the last couple of years, but really focusing on it a lot more lately. And I'm trying to connect the dots and kind of, with regards to investing, it's all about kind of trying to not to predict the future, but if we can at least to a certain degree understand where things could potentially go, that could drastically help our investment thesis and help us create generational wealth, right? It's not about predicting the future. It's just trying to identify certain outcomes and then plan accordingly, right? And one thing I want to talk about, and that's the topic of this video, is the blue chip phase of MJ stocks. We have yet to get there, and eventually we're going to see mega mergers, right? We thought, Aphria and Tilray was a mega merger. To a certain degree, maybe, but that was two LPs, two Canadian producers that came together. And we knew there was a ton of consolidation and saturation in the space. So we knew consolidation and mergers and acquisitions and bankruptcies and solvencies, all that was going to be inevitable. But I'm talking mega mergers where we're going to see a MSO, a multi-state operator, so a US producer, merge with a Canadian producer, an LP, a licensed producer. And I think that's ultimately where we're going to go. And I think we're going to see MSOs become LPs and vice versa. So we're going to discuss all of this and more, and I'm curious to hear everybody's thoughts in the comment section below. Before we get to it though, all that I say, as always, is not financial advice. This is for entertainment and informational purposes only. My own thoughts and opinions, and you should never ever buy or sell anything based on anything that I say or anything that I write. Also, make sure to smash the like, subscribe if you're new. You can tick the bell and you'll be notified on any future videos or when I go live. You can also follow us over on X, formerly Twitter. The handle for that is @GroupPow. Going to be hanging out there a lot more lately. That's my new platform of choice going forward. And full disclosure, I do own Curaleaf and Tilray. Tilray is my biggest holding in my portfolio, and my second biggest holding is Curaleaf. And if you haven't seen my updated 2024 MJ portfolio video with percentage breakdown, you can check that out. But I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, this guy's saying Tilray and Curaleaf could potentially merge because those are his two biggest holdings. Well, that's definitely not the case. I'm not saying Curaleaf could. I'm not saying they're going to. I'm just saying it's a possibility. And it's very likely, in my opinion, that we're going to see MSOs become LPs and vice versa. We're going to see mergers of those two types of companies and markets, right? And it really makes sense because if you look at alcohol, you look at tobacco, it's basically going to be on that same level playing field, in my opinion. In my opinion, it should be even on a different playing field. Like we're medicine of the future, right? This is natural medicine. It's an amazing plant with tons of medicinal benefits and things like that, medical purposes. And we know that alcohol and tobacco serve basically none of that, right? They're just used for recreational, and it's basically poison. So in my opinion, MJ should be on its own pedestal, but it is what it is. But ultimately, we're going to end up there, and we'll be descheduled, and we'll be treated just like alcohol and tobacco. And then eventually, it's just going to be a global player. You're going to have global players. You're going to have MSOs become LPs, vice versa. You're going to be able to, do interstate. You're going to be able to do between different countries, right? Trade between different countries. And if you look at, the NAFTA, the North American Trade Agreement, we're on the path there, right? We see Europe starting, Germany coming online, the first in Europe, then, Mexico and Latin America, and then Canada. And the next on the list, in my opinion, is going to be the United States. And there was some news today that the UK was actually, I think it was the UK, they approved crypto ETF products. So the fact that, again, usually the US is never last, but they're never first either, right? And that's because they have the biggest economy in the world, and they can afford not to be last, right? But they also don't want to be a guinea pig and a test subject. They want to be somewhere in the middle of the pack. Even toward the end, that's fine because they have the biggest, biggest GDP, the biggest economy in the world. They can leapfrog everybody else, right? But again, just, before I get into this tweet that I posted, I also posted it over here on X, but this is on the community tab of my YouTube channel. So if you go here, I also post a lot of stuff on there as well. And you can see here, this is the one that I posted from 3 days ago. But before I read that, I just want to remind everybody that Curaleaf issued a statement on the reported interest in Cronos. And we know that Cronos was potentially exploring sale. They're sitting on a boatload of cash. I think it was just under $1 billion, like $800 million or something like that last time we checked. And they responded basically denying it, but there's already been hints and potential for this to happen, right? We know Cronos was potentially exploring a sale. Curaleaf expressed interest is what we heard, like this was being reported, but never actually officially confirmed. And this is just, again, a hint of where we're going. And who knows? Maybe Curaleaf does buy Cronos. Maybe they merge. Maybe Curaleaf merges with Tilray. I think they have a lot. They're very similar. If you look at Tilray's businesses, they're focusing on a lot of, Curaleaf has a lot of the same brands, a lot of the same markets. Like they're focusing on Germany as well, Portugal. Like if there was ever a mega merger, in my opinion, that could ever happen. And I'm not saying this just because it's Tilray is my number one holding and Curaleaf my number two. I legitimately think that Tilray and Curaleaf could potentially be a nice fit. And I mean, Boris Jordan and Irwin Simon kind of look like brothers. So, but at the end of the day, it seems like they're both very similar. And I think they could complement each other very well. And here's the thing you have to remind yourself as well, before I read this message that I posted. Why is Constellation Brands investing $5 billion into Canopy Growth? Why is Altria becoming a huge shareholder in Cronos? Why is British American Tobacco investing $124 million into Organigram? Well, a lot of these LPs have head start when it comes to international markets, but you have to really ask yourself, like, why are all these companies, big alcohol, big pharma, big tobacco, why are they all investing in the Canadian LPs, the Canadian producers? If there's nothing worth owning in Canada, if there's no value there or no growth, just imagine if LPs can sell to the US, right? Vice versa, it's not really a big deal, right? Like who cares if Canadian companies can sell to Canada? It's, there's more people basically in California than all of Canada. So, it's not really that big of a market. So the fact that LPs can potentially sell into the US one day, it's probably not going to be, next year, it's probably going to be a while. But eventually, if we get descheduling or full-blown federal legalization through Congress, and I just did a video on that as well, I think descheduling is the most likely scenario with regards to legalization. But, how are these companies going to become global powerhouses? And I think the most likely scenario is we're going to see that blue chip phase where, again, we see mega mergers. And I know it sounds like, Tilray and Aphria was a mega merger, but in my opinion, that was not. That was just, a very big one. But we're going to see blue chip phase where, if you go and just look at the amount of, just on my watch list, if we go to the Canadian, look at all the Canadian companies, right? And there's been so much consolidation. And then if you go to the US side of things, there's so many companies that are basically all doing the same thing. And eventually the US is going to suffer the same fate as the Canadian market. They're just going to have to consolidate, right? There's not going to be room for thousands and thousands of producers. It's going to be, a select 5 or, 10, maybe 20, where they're going to basically be global powerhouses. And, probably 5 to 10 are going to run the whole global trade, right? The whole industry. So in my opinion, just looking at the similarities between Curaleaf and Tilray, I think it's very possible that once we do hit a blue chip phase, these two companies could potentially merge, and that would solve all of these problems, right? All of these US companies, big pharma, big alcohol, big tobacco that are investing in Canadian LPs. Well, wouldn't that just make sense if they merged with an MSO? Well, then everybody wins, right? It's a win-win-win. It's a win-win-win for everybody. So here's what I actually posted. We have still yet to see the blue chip phase of MJ stocks. MSOs will become LPs and vice versa. Imagine if a mega merger happened, say Tilray and Curaleaf. This could very well happen one day. And maybe it's not Curaleaf. Maybe it's not Tilray. Maybe it's Curaleaf and Cronos. Maybe it's Tilray and, look at Acreage and Canopy, right? So the writing is on the wall. We know Tilray has convertible notes in MedBen. We'll see that's a pretty distressed business, but they might be able to scoop that up, kind of similar to what they did with Hexo. But ultimately, this is going to happen. Whether, it's going to be up for debate, we don't know what the future holds, but this is very, very possible, and not just possible, but very, very likely, in my opinion, as the most likely scenario. So remember this market dynamic when you're worried about current prices. Global MJ legalization only happens once. We have to change our mindset, right? And I know it's been a pretty rough day out there. I've been saying for a while that I thought MSOS was probably going to go back down to around the low 7s, high 6s as a potential bottom. And then today we hit a low of 736. So pretty much exactly what I expected. And then if you go over to my YouTube channel, go to the community section here, I put on there MSOS, what comes first? and we were at $9. So I said, what comes first? $6? That's what the camp that I was in, or $12. So it was $3 from 9 to 12 and $3 from 9 to 6. So it was a great time to put out that poll, and 112 people, 62% voted we were going to $12, right? And that's just because the herd, most of retail investors just keep thinking we're going to go up from here, right? And again, it's not that I want it. It's not that I was short or anything. It's not that I wanted the price to go down. It's just the most likely scenario. We knew that crypto is still stealing the show, AI, big tech. So I've been on record to say that MJ's not going to enter a new multi-year bull market until big tech and big crypto, crypto and big tech top out, and AI, right? And we're starting to see that. NVDA showing signs of topping out. There was a weekly bull flag targeting 1,008, and we're seeing some cracks in, Apple's armor and things like that. So again, it was the most likely scenario in my opinion, because of the fact that even on the weekly time frame, we had no support all the way down to $5.99. Right, we went from the low there at $5.99 all the way up to over $10, confirming a monthly uptrend for the first time in ETF history. But we ran 77% without any weekly support, right? So from that high, we could have pulled back 43% and still been in a weekly uptrend, and we could still see an EMA 12 and 26 bear cross, which means even more downside from here. And again, I think we're heading to daily oversold, and that's basically going to be the first time since October. And a lot of other names are heading there as well. If we take a look at Curaleaf, for example, Curaleaf here is very close to, actually, it just hit daily oversold. And this has been one of the stronger names in the space, technically speaking. AYR, Curaleaf were one of the first to confirm monthly uptrends, and now we're seeing daily oversold territory. So that, again, increases the odds that we're going to see that across the rest of the sector, and the U.S. names and MSOs as well, which tracks all the U.S. producers, right? So could be heading to daily oversold, and like I said, that would probably put us down around $7 or high sixes. So again, just looking at the most likely scenario and factoring in technicals, leaving your emotions at the door. When we go, when we run 70, 80% with no weekly support, you need to expect this type of pullback. And right now we're still in a weekly uptrend. There's no major red flags. We're still in a monthly uptrend. We just started monthly consolidation, having lost last month's low. So again, no support on the monthly time frame until 492, right? So this is why we need to expect this. It's looking like I said, over the next couple of months, we could get some news, whether it's safer banking that's gaining traction. There's a good chance a lot of, advocates and people who are dealing with, that are immersed in this stuff in Capitol Hill are saying, like Don Murphy saying, that there's a good chance that it happens this year. Safer banking, right? We get some sort of access to traditional funding, right, in the capital markets. So we'll continue to monitor that, but rescheduling, I think there's a good chance that we'll get the most likely scenario, Schedule 3, and then the most likely time frame is between now and the end of April. Maybe it's a month or two after that, like I said, but I think the most likely scenario is between now and the end of April. And then that 60-day comment period, it gets wrapped up before the elections and then gets enacted late 2024 or sometime in early 2025. That's what I'm looking at. And then, Florida on the ballot, potentially enacted into 2025 as well, adult use sales. We got Pennsylvania. So there's so many catalysts, right? MJ Act up for review here in Canada. I sound like a broken record, but I hear people all the time. And one thing I wanted to mention as well, I mentioned this to Pow Group private members the other day. If you do Tilray divided by MSOs, I said, watch for Tilray to perform better versus, what's going on here? TLRY divided by MSOs. So I said, watch for Tilray to outperform MSOs because we confirmed a daily uptrend. We had our low, high, higher low, and higher high, and we could still see an EMA 12 and 26 bull cross, and we actually broke above the previous candle high here on the daily time frame, which means MSOs and Tilray can still go down, but it means that Tilray, the downside may be limited, and that was evident today. Look at MSOs. It was down over 8% at one point, and if we take a look at Tilray on the day-to-day, Tilray was only down around just under 2%, right? So it meant that we could see MSOs drop more than Tilray, and that's exactly what we've seen. And in my opinion, I think Tilray is going to outperform MSOs over the short term here. And if we get a headline, if we get a DEA approved Schedule 3 recommendation, where do you think the money is going to flow? It's going to flow into these NASDAQ listed names. Like I said, I know people who are in Europe and different parts of the world, in Denmark, when they go to buy us an MJ stock, they can't even buy MSOs. Like there's brokers that are blocking that, and OTC, and then the Canadian exchanges, they can't buy on that. So the only ones they have access to is your Tilrays, your Canopies, your Sundials, your High Tides, right? Your Auroras. And if you look what happened during the HHS recommendation, that news came out at the end of August, and by the time that news came out, Tilray had already doubled in price. So it already ran over 100%, and it ran up in anticipation of that. So I think something similar could happen where Tilray could run maybe 50, 100%, maybe even more, and then we get the news, and then if it's DEA approved Schedule 3, then it's hard to tell how high these things will go, right? I could see easily $5 to $7 on Tilray, but then, we should see the U.S. names follow suit as well. But when that headline comes out, watch for the Canadian names to get the majority of the buying pressure, because those are the ones that most people have access to, right? And that's where big money like Wall Street plays, right? They're not. That's where Tilray, I think, had almost $2.2 billion traded just on the NASDAQ alone in one day. And for comparative sake, for context, Curaleaf only had I think 15 million. 15 million versus 2.2 billion is a big difference just on the NASDAQ as well. That's not even factoring in Tilray on the other exchanges, right? The Canadian exchanges, etc. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Do you think we have hit the blue chip phase yet? I don't think we have. Once the U.S. legalizes, then I think that's, whether it be through Congress, through bills, legislation, whether it be through descheduling, right? I think that's when we're going to be expecting the blue chip phase. I don't think it's even possible for us to enter the blue chip phase without the US legalizing it at some form, either through Congress or descheduling it, right? So I think the blue chip phase is probably at least a couple of years out. It's going to take US legalization and reform, and then after a year or two, once these companies in the US have to operate under a legal framework, and then competition, they're just going to be forced to merge with MSOs, LPs and MSOs and vice versa, right? So I think blue chip phase has yet to begin, and I think it's quite a ways around, quite a ways out at this point. It's not around the corner or anything like that. I think it's going to be a couple of years, but let me know your thoughts and opinions on the comment section below. If you agree with me, disagree with me, I always love hearing from you, and I encourage thoughtful discourse. Even if you don't agree with me, right? We can all still be friends and try to persuade each other and kind of try to get to the most likely scenario. Again, it's not about predicting the future, but trying to have an idea of what the outcome could be, and that could drastically help us in the long term, right? So hope you have a fantastic evening. It's Rod with Power Group. Thanks again for joining us in the pursuit of wealth, and we'll see you again on the next video.